Hey everyone, so there was a really cool fossil that was discovered recently, encased in 99 million-year-old Burmese amber, and it's shaking up our understanding of the earliest days of the plant-insect pollinator relationship. We know today that angiosperms, the flowering plants, have spent millions of years cultivating an ecological relationship with insects, who act as their pollinators. The insects fly from plant to plant, drinking nectar in the flowers and eating yummy pollen, and as they do so, they get messy. They get covered in pollen. It sticks to their hairs, to their legs, to their mandibles, you name it, they get covered in it. When they fly from plant to plant, some of this pollen will inevitably get shaken off into the flowers of a new plant. Thus, the insect, like a bee, just by going about its business and collecting food for the hive, is also participating in the angiosperm's reproduction by behaving as a carrier or a vector for the plant's gametes. This is a beautiful and incredibly important ecological relationship, and this new study gives a fascinating new look at how and when this relationship began, close to 200 million years ago. The study, published in the journal Current Biology, examined a piece of Burmese amber that contained within it a fossilized beetle, surrounded by numerous grains of pollen, all of which were alive sometime during the mid to late Mesozoic. The amber-encased beetle, named Cretoparacucujus cycadophyllus, is a cousin species of the Paracucujus genus that currently exists in Australia. These extant beetle relatives also pollinate cycads, specifically the species Macrozamia riedlii. The fossilized beetle is also a cousin species to the more distantly related Metacucujus beetle of South Africa, which pollinate the Encephalardo cycads. Now, this fossilized specimen, being found in Southeast Asia, Burma and the Myanmar amber deposits, this triangulates the range of these beetles to be centered on the Indian Ocean, with populations having spread out at least as far as Africa, Australia, and the forests of Southeast Asia. Now, what's kind of neat is that because most cycad plants are pollinated by beetles, it's believed that this ecological relationship emerged first, considering the fact that beetles predate bees and cycads predate flowering plants by quite a long period of time. So the cycads and the beetles came first, and they experienced perhaps the first wave of this evolutionary divergence towards the insect-pollinator symbiotic relationship. Now, the fossilized pollen that was surrounding the beetle was not positively identified as cycad pollen. This is a relative weak point in the hypothesis, but it's not there for no reason. Plant tissue doesn't seem to fossilize very often, and when you're talking about pollen, or pollen grains, you're talking about something that's very, very small and very easy to mistake for anything else. The problem with studying very small fossils that don't form that often in the first place is that the available database of information for you to research on plant pollen fossils is kind of sparse. There's not much there. And as such, it's hard to come to any definite conclusions because the data that you would use to confirm or validate your conclusion, the data just isn't there. But the data that we do have, like the extensive paleontological data illustrating the evolutionary relationship between beetles and cycads, would make it a reasonable hypothesis that all of this fossilized pollen around the beetle is indeed from a cycad. Otherwise, what's the beetle doing around it? So why is all of this exciting? Why is this newsworthy? Well, after morphological and phenotypic analysis, the researchers estimated that the beetle species emerged around 160 million years ago, give or take a few million years, which would have been sometime in the mid-Cretaceous. This makes it a physical sample of one of the earliest cycad pollinators, and thus one of the earliest insect pollinators in Earth's history. This study is one more that can be added to the ever-growing body of paleoentomological, paleobotanical, and ecological data that tells us a story of earthly evolution, wherein the pollinator symbiosis began with herbivorous beetles and cone-producing seed plants, and evolved over time to produce all manner of beautiful flowers, pollinated by flying insects like bees and butterflies. I love studies like this because they really give us a glimpse into the evolutionary movie of life on Earth, so that we can visualize how lineages morphed and changed over millions and millions of years.